I had to come out of this. I'm just, and I'll leave. Put this on top so that I'll leave this here.
Yeah, it's
I've been
warm.
thinking about the interview. I would have wanted something different stripes.
No.
I know, but I'm just saying stripes.
Oh,
I wouldn't have worn that. Salads are better bright colors than salads.
so pay no attention to the screen over here. That's just recording you guys. And whenever you're ready, go right ahead. All right. Hey, folks, Anthony Rogers right here from Environmental Action. I am so blessed and lucky to be sitting with two of my heroes and virtual mentors who are leaders in the environmental justice movement. And we are so pleased to have Dr. Bullard, Robert Bullard, who is the Dean of the Barbara Jordan Mickey Leland School for Public Affairs at Texas State University, author of 18 books and a copious amount of journals and articles, and some refer to him as the father of environmental justice. So pleased to have you here, sir. And then we also have Dr. Beverly Wright, who is the director of the Deep South Center for Environmental Justice at Dillard University, a professor and also author of many, many journals on this issue. So thank you guys so much for being here. And I know you're both really busy at COP21. And briefly, just I want to say that it was such an honor to assist you guys in bringing students from historically Black colleges and universities here. And that's my first question that I want to ask both of you. For those who don't understand, how would you define a frontline environmental justice community?
You can go for it.
Well, uh, African Americans and other people of color live in areas that are devastated by environmental pollution and toxics, but we also live in communities that are very climate vulnerable. And so the frontline communities for us is basically those communities that see climate change first, worst, and longest.
Right.
They're at ground zero. So it's not rocket science.
Right. Okay. Okay. And anything to add to that? I mean, Dr. Wright, you live in New Orleans, Louisiana, which some could say is ground zero for a frontline community made famous.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for this opportunity, and thank you so much for your hard work and getting us here.
Absolutely.
And it's really an honor and a privilege to be a part of this effort to bring 31 HBCU students, from across, I would say across the nation, but HBCUs are not all across the nation. So from as far away as Lincoln University in Pittsburgh,
Pennsylvania, right.
Pennsylvania, all the way down south to as far as Florida. Um, so we are very happy to be here, and the students are excited, along with 15 mentors, faculty members from HBCU. So thank you again
Of
for
course.
your assistance in getting us here. But I think that when I talk about environmental justice communities as it relates to climate justice, I always like to make certain that people understand that environmental justice communities are communities, as Bob has already said, are disproportionately exposed to toxins. But they're also the communities that are affected most by climate change.
Right.
And so our communities are in what we call double jeopardy. First, they're they're in danger because of the risks that large facilities pose to their health. But secondly, these facilities also contribute most to greenhouse gases that are causing climate change. And then, of course, these same communities are frontline when we're dealing with climate change impacts. So, you know, our fight to reduce pollution and protect the health of our citizens who live fence line with these large facilities who are poisoning them came together when we recognized, what are the causes of climate change? And these same facilities that are killing us are also drowning us
Right.
through the increase in greenhouse gases that they help to produce that cause climate impacts.
Well, yesterday, right here, actually, in this space, I addressed a group of frontline women from all over the world. And I mentioned that climate change is a system of oppression. And what I meant by that was that, of course, we're talking about natural phenomena, but these natural phenomena are exacerbated by policies that allow them to happen. And I was wondering if you could talk about some of the historic and current policies in the United States that have, if you will, created these frontline communities and keep them as frontline communities.
Well, the fact that we have 15 historically Black colleges and universities at COP, as Dr. Wright said, from Texas to Pennsylvania. Many of our schools are located in communities that have historically been residentially segregated, have been selected for all kinds of industrial facilities, from chemical plants, refineries, and polluting facilities. They're also located in areas, low-lying areas that are prone to flooding, in areas that are climate vulnerable when it comes to severe weather events. So it makes a whole lot of sense to look at the institutional systemic barriers that create vulnerability.
Sure.
And so you talk about institutionalized racism that push people into very vulnerable places and don't provide them with the level of protection in terms of levees and
Right.
and drainage and enforcing all kinds of environmental regulation, et cetera.
Right.
And so so the social vulnerability, environmental vulnerability, you talk about the economic vulnerability, all those things combine to really create a perfect storm, in a sense, to disempower and disenfranchise. And then you look at the political system, where you can't vote your way out of climate disasters, particularly when people in the U.S. are trying to take away the vote.
Correct.
So all those things create a system of oppression.
Okay. All right. Anything to add to that, Dr. Wright?
Well, maybe just a little on the person, to give a personal
Yes, please.
side to it. So just ditto everything that Bob said, but place yourself in Louisiana, driving along the Mississippi River Chemical Corridor, where there are 136 petrochemical plants and 6 refineries releasing upwards of 200 million pounds of pollution a year.
Right.
But on that particular drive, you begin to notice some strange things.
Okay.
You know that thing, Strange Fruit?
Right.
That
right.
song, Strange Fruit?
Yep.
So things start to look a bit odd, because you see a Black community that's fence line to a petrochemical plant. But just across the street or down the road, there'll be a place where houses used to be.
Right.
You just see pilings. And so I remember questioning the community members who had small crosses in front on their lawns to represent every person in their family that had died of cancer. So
Wow.
you'd see 2 or 3 or 4. And I said, so what's that over there? And the response was, well, you know, the boss said that he was going to buy us out of all of this poison. And he came and he bought all the white folks out across the street.
Mhm.
That was 8 years ago.
Okay.
So if you talk about political clout, racism, discrimination,
Right.
all of these things add to a system that has been extremely oppressive in ways that most people can't imagine. If you think of the environment as being something that does not discriminate.
Right.
Well, it can't discriminate forever,
Right.
but it can discriminate for a time.
Yes.
Meaning the air may be bad by me for several years, but before it's over with, that same air will reach you.
That's right.
So we're front line on this. And it's taken a while for white folks where we live to understand that you allow me to be poisoned, very soon you'll also be poisoned.
Absolutely.
So that's what's going on.
Absolutely. Now, the last time I saw you, Dr. Wright, was in D.C. when we were at that congressional forum on the Clean Power Plan.
Yeah.
And I brought up Executive Order 12898, which of course was signed by Bill Clinton, and mentioned to you to remark on the fact that this was signed in 1994, and subsequent books of Dr. Wright, of Dr. Bullard rather, have come out since then, which would actually show that things have gotten worse. So my question to both of you is what kind of policies do we really need that are going to be more, the way it works right now is if our communities are disproportionately polluted, we have to depend on the Civil Rights Act mostly to try to get justice, which is virtually impossible because you've got to prove discriminatory intent. And so what are the policies that we need for a more proactive approach to, so it's not end of the pipe all the time?
Well, I think the fact that over the last 20 plus years, we've made some improvements when it comes to environmental policy. But again, if you look at the fact that the laws that we have today are not equally enforced across the board, we need equal protection under the law. Every community is not created equal. And so when we talk about uh, uh, environmental laws and environmental protection, we talk about health equity. We need to make sure that all the laws that we have are enforced stringently. You know, if you are poor, if you live on the other side of the tracks, you have the same rights and you deserve the same level of protection. And I think the fact that over the period of time, there has been this thinking somehow that poor people don't have the right to equal protection. We don't have the right to parks and green space. We don't have the right to public transportation. Those things these are basic rights, and we have to fight to make sure that those rights that we call civil rights are also thought of as basic human rights.
Right. Absolutely.
So, for me, this is a hard question.
Right.
Because we were there at the very beginning with the signing of the executive order. And what I've noticed is that depending upon what administration is in power, we make more headway or less.
Right.
And so all of it is so very tied to the political system. This to me says that if we do nothing else, we need to engage our community in everything related to voting, because who you vote for and how they vote can impact your health. It can determine life or death.
And especially at the local level.
At the local level, exactly. So you look at the criminal justice system and the laws that were passed under Clinton, and how that has affected our community.
Yeah.
All the way through the quality of life for our families, all of this with so many of our people in jail.
Yeah.
We have to get that across. The other thing that I think is that we need more innovative and creative and brave thinkers as it relates to moving forward and challenging laws. We understand, the Supreme Court that we have.
Right.
So we have to be very careful also about what we send up.
Right.
Because it could then hurt us even more if we lose.
Like the
But we
Voting
need-
Rights
like
Act.
the Voting
Right.
Rights Act. So we need really creative minds on how to deal with this. So I'll give you an example. And I thought that what our EPA director did,
Gina McCarthy.
no, before
Oh, Lisa Jackson.
Lisa Jackson did before she left, was to place children's health as a top priority and begin research and monitoring of the air around schools.
Right.
So she's had so much pressure on her to do nothing. They fought her at everything, but she managed to think creatively.
Right.
Out of that came some other things, like the refinery bill
Right.
that we're looking at, and now the Clean Power Fund.
Right.
But it takes creative minds understanding just how demented some of the other minds are.
Yes.
Figure out how you can work around it and get some things done to just push the envelope just a little bit further. Each generation needs to push it further.
That is a great segue to my last question for both of you, because just in speaking with Mario, who's here with you, the regimen that you have your students on is pretty strict. I mean, they're filling out journals, and they're making the most out of their trip here to Paris. They had to.
Yes,
to get over
they
here.
did.
Yeah. In order to get here,
Right.
Just ain't no pleasure trip.
That's right. That's right. No shopping.
Right.
But what is the importance of this next generation? Why do they need to be here? In addition to what you just spoke about, what is the some of the goals of having them here?
Well, every social movement that has been successful in the United States has always had a strong youth and student component, whether it was civil rights, human rights, peace and justice, anti-war, environmental, etc. The climate justice movement has to have young leaders and emerging leaders. Our Black colleges and universities have always provided the leadership spark for that. And so climate change is no different. We have to have our HBCUs, students and their mentors in a leadership role.
Right.
And we are, HBCUs have been the production place for Black leaders.
That's right.
And we know that, and so we should continue to do that. And so, I'm at Texas Southern University in Houston, and Dr. Wright is at Dillard University in New Orleans. We're in the South. Most of our HBCUs in the South, 55% of all Black people in the South. So we have to produce. Most of the major storm events, climate events are in the South. So we got to really hit home to our students that they have to own this issue and take the leadership role, not stand back and let other folks lead.
Absolutely, absolutely. And please add on to that.
Oh, yes. So I guess that what I've said, because Bob has certainly answered the question completely, but just to put it in context just a little bit, our goal to make certain that African American students were involved in the environmental justice and climate justice movements actually came out of an experience where our students were not there.
Right.
Particularly on the global scene, we were not here.
Right.
And after so many years, over 10 years of attending these events, and we saw every person there, Native, Latino, large numbers of white students, and having them to speak for us because we were not there made no sense.
Right.
So to be honest, we tried very hard to get funding from groups to bring our students and train them. No response. But then we watched other large white organizations get big bucks, and they would parachute into our schools, and they taught about climate and green and sustainability, but they never spoke of justice. And to me, that was a travesty.
Absolutely.
If you don't know anything else at an HBCU, you need to understand the nexus between climate and justice, or the nexus between anything and everything and justice, which is Bullard and I both went to HBCUs, and that was pressed upon us to give back and to understand.
Right.
So there was a vacuum there, and we decided with almost no money to start doing that about 3 years ago, and now we're 4 years in our 4th year. The number of HBCUs are growing. We need young African Americans to speak for their own community because no one knows your community the way that you do.
Right.
Secondly, if you want to engage our community, then there's nothing like seeing an older Black man or female talking with a young student that they just love. They will listen to them before they listen to us.
Right.
And so we need them on the ground, convening meetings, talking to our community. And we also need them to be researchers and scientists with a moral conscience, understanding, why you're there, what you're there for, and don't become a part of the problem, become a part of the solutions.
All right. Dr. Bullard, Dr. Wright, thank you so much for your time. Looking forward to dinner with y'all next week. We'll continue this conversation. This is exactly what you guys have been supporting. So please keep the support coming so that we can continue supporting HBCU students, HBCU professors and teachers, and let's get our future leaders here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Anthony.
All right.
Great interview.
Thank you, guys.
Enjoyed it. And I'm so sorry I was.
No.
That's the last thing. I've been doing this a long time. I just stop. Oh my God.
Oh boy.
You look good.
Yeah. All Black would have looked better. I look smaller. I look thinner. I'll tell you that. Yeah.
Oh
Yeah,
man.
very good.
Have you been getting some good food while you've been here?
Oh
Yeah.
They not